The Caribbean has become a military chessboard, and nearly every major piece belongs to the United States. The USS Gerald Ford, the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, entered Caribbean waters in mid-November 2025, joining what defense analysts are calling the largest concentration of American firepower in the region in decades. What Washington labels a counter-narcotics mission looks increasingly like something far more strategic. Hello, my name is Robert Harrison, independent journalist. Today we're analyzing what this unprecedented military buildup actually means, why the official narrative doesn't match the reality on the ground, and how this deployment compares to one of the most uneven military matchups in modern history. The implications extend far beyond Venezuela's coastline. Operation Southern Spear now involves approximately 15,000 American troops stationed across the Caribbean. The Ford Carrier Strike Group includes over 4,000 sailors, 3 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, and Carrier Air Wing 8 with 44 FA-18 Super Hornets. This joins the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group already in the region. It's an armada. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says this deployment targets narco-terrorists and aims to dismantle transnational criminal organizations. Since September 2025, U.S. forces have conducted over 20 strikes on boats allegedly carrying drugs, killing at least 83 people. The administration offers this as justification, but where's the evidence these vessels were actually trafficking narcotics? Former U.S. Southern Command leader Admiral James Stavridis was remarkably candid at a recent discussion. This is not about drugs, it's about intimidating Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. The data supports this. Fentanyl, which kills most Americans, comes overland from Mexico. Cocaine from Venezuela typically goes to Europe, not the United States. Venezuela ranks 50th out of 145 countries in the 2025 Global Firepower Index. The United States ranks first. Venezuela maintains approximately 123,000 active personnel and 8,000 reserves. Its defense budget has collapsed from $6.2 billion in 2013 to roughly $4 billion today. America's defense budget? A staggering $895 billion in 2025. The numbers are brutal. The United States operates nearly 13,000 aircraft. Venezuela has 229. Fighter jets. America fields over 1,700. Venezuela has approximately 30, mostly aging Russian models. The US has 5,800 helicopters. Venezuela counts 88. This isn't a gap in capability. It's a technological and numerical chasm. America operates 11 aircraft carriers, floating cities of overwhelming firepower. Venezuela has 0. The U.S. Navy maintains hundreds of surface combatants. Venezuela's Navy counts 1 frigate as its sole blue water vessel. Venezuela does have more patrol boats for coastal defense, but as one analyst put it, that's like bringing a fishing net to a missile fight. On November 16th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio designated Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, effective November 24th. The designation claims Maduro himself heads this network of military and government officials allegedly involved in drug trafficking. This legal maneuver dramatically expands what operations the U.S. military can legally conduct inside Venezuela. The terrorist designation isn't primarily about law enforcement. It's about expanding military authority. President Trump himself confirmed this on November 17th. The designation allows us to target Maduro's assets and infrastructure inside Venezuela. Former officials note this mirrors legal frameworks used before strikes in other theaters. The table is being set. Venezuela has mobilized over 200,000 troops, activating all branches of its armed forces plus militia units. President Maduro declared readiness for armed struggle in defense of national territory. Coastal radar sites and air defense batteries are on high alert. This mobilization serves dual purposes: military deterrence and domestic political theater to consolidate support. Here's what defense analysts aren't discussing enough. Venezuela's equipment is aging and often non-operational. Years of economic collapse, hyperinflation, and crippling sanctions have hollowed out maintenance budgets. Many systems inherited from the Soviet era lack spare parts. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans have fled the country since 2013, including many military-age citizens. Venezuela isn't entirely defenseless. It possesses approximately 5,000 Russian-made Igla portable missile systems that could threaten low-flying aircraft. Russian-supplied anti-ship missiles could target U.S. vessels. And planning documents suggest dispersing forces across 280-plus locations for guerrilla-style resistance. These tactics worked in Iraq and Afghanistan, bogging down superior forces in urban environments. Here's what rarely gets mentioned. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, an estimated 300 billion barrels. The New York Times reported Trump has discussed Venezuela's oil wealth with aides. Sources say Maduro offered the US rights to much of that oil in exchange for forestalling military action. Those talks were called off, but officials say they are not entirely dead. US sanctions have devastated Venezuela's economy. Purchasing power has collapsed. The country that once had Latin America's highest standard of living now sees widespread poverty and shortages. This economic pressure is itself a weapon. A nation struggling to feed its citizens cannot sustain a prolonged military campaign. The blockade works slowly but effectively. Caribbean nations aligned with Washington express concern about maritime safety while maintaining diplomatic distance. Colombia, the Dominican Republic, and Trinidad and Tobago participate in joint maritime drills with US forces. Meanwhile, Venezuela seeks backing from allies Cuba and Nicaragua. China and Russia, both with significant interests in Caracas, have remained notably quiet. Defense analysts draw uncomfortable parallels to the Gulf of Tonkin incident of 1964. In both cases, contested intelligence and political pressure combined to amplify perceived threats. Naval presence became justification for escalation. The lesson: military signaling can deter conflict or invite it, depending on how leaders interpret events at sea. Right now, both sides manage optics carefully. Senate Republicans recently rejected legislation that would have required congressional authorization before attacking Venezuela. This means Trump maintains wide latitude for military action. Some Republican senators have grown skeptical of the operation's expanding scope, but they stopped short of limiting executive authority. The domestic political calculation remains fluid. Trump said November 15th he'd sort of made up my mind about Venezuela, but wouldn't specify what that means. On November 29th, he declared Venezuelan airspace closed in its entirety. Major airlines suspended flights. The escalation continues incrementally. Each step builds pressure on Maduro while creating domestic justification for potential strikes. The question isn't if pressure increases, it's whether it culminates. The military comparison tells one story: overwhelming American superiority. But history teaches that superior firepower doesn't guarantee quick or cheap victories. Afghanistan and Iraq demonstrated how insurgencies exploit urban environments. Venezuela has geographic advantages, and Maduro's regime shows no signs of collapse. Whatever Washington decides, this won't be simple. That's the analysis.
The most powerful naval force afloat has entered the Caribbean. Deck lights off. This is America's largest naval deployment to Latin America since 1989. The Ford, flanked by on deck, Air Wing 8 leads in silence. Super Hornets, Growlers, Seahawks. Newsfeed show satellite images of the carrier moving through international waters. Caracas calls it an act of intimidation. 500 miles south in dark radar in Puerto Cabello, a young operator leans closer to his screen. A new contact appears. Two MH-60 Seahawks lift off within minutes, rotors cutting through the dark. Their mission: visual ID of the incoming contacts. Just 6 boats, weapons uncovered, holding position 8,000 yards up Ford's bow. The destroyer captain holds fire.
I'm certain you'll want to watch the video appearing on your screen right now. Thank you.